Just as a reminder of the meeting etiquette, we are all virtual, so when speaking, make sure to list your name and the local government that you represent. We also have can use the hand raise function. I think would be good to help with the sorting of the people who want to speak. As a reminder, this meeting is being live streamed on the YouTube channel as well. So all votes will be conducted by roll call to comply with laws around virtual meetings, and Beth will call the roll each time a vote is needed. So Beth, would you proceed with the roll call?
Sure. All righty. I'm just going to call the jurisdiction. So if you will let me know who you are, and we'll start with Aberdeen.
Will Mullaney present for Aberdeen.
Okay, Apex.
Brett Gant, present.
Carborough. Chatham County. City of Durham. Durham County. Just making sure I need to admit people. Johnston County. Lee County. I see Bill's on. Are you there, Bill?
Lee County, Bill Carver present.
Gotcha. Moore County. Orange County.
Jean Hamilton present.
Pittsburgh.
Pamela Baldwin present.
Sanford. Selma. Wake County. Susan, are you on? I think that was her. All right, we have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Beth. I think Susan, like myself, is a little embarrassed by our Tar Heels last weekend. But anyway, as chair, I think I mentioned this in the last meeting if you attended. I've asked the staff to have a section at the beginning of the meeting about kind of getting to know the Central Pines Regional Council. Some fun fact about the history of this organization to make sure we know what's come before us. So the get to know section today, let me read this out. It's about I'll just read it. So the first set of officers for what was called the Research Triangle Regional Planning Commission were elected on October 28th, 1959, during a meeting of the Planning Commission at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. The first set of officers were Mr. James Ray, the chair, E.K. Powell, the first vice chair, Orville Campbell was the second vice chair, Adelaide Walters was the secretary, and Arthur Clark was the treasurer. And during that meeting, the commission appointed the first executive director, Mr. Pearson Stewart. Mr. Stewart was also the executive vice president for planning at the Research Triangle Foundation, illustrating the tight connection of our newly formed organization with the development of Research Triangle Park. This was a busy meeting, so during that meeting, Mr. George Simpson, the chairman of the executive committee of the Research Triangle Institute, which is still around, and member of the Research Triangle Planning Commission Board, also discussed the growth of RTI and its relation to the Triangle effort. I think we're standing on the footsteps, giant or shoulders of these folks who helped with the organization of RTP and the Triangle area back in the day. So thank you, Beth and Lee, for that look back on one of our first meetings. And now we will proceed to the introduction of new executive committee members and a brief overview of the executive committee. I'd like to welcome, if they're on, I'm not sure if I heard them, Randy Haven O'Donnell from the town of Carborough and Byron McAllister from the town of Selma. These folks are some of the officers of the Central Pines board, and as a consequence of that, they are also new members of the executive committee. And I'd like to pass it over to Lee because he can tell us a little bit more about the difference between the board of delegates and the executive committee. So Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of the executive committee. What we wanted to do is provide a brief executive committee orientation this time each year. So we would anticipate in September, that would be the time that any new executive committee members would join. So thank you to Beth for putting together a couple of nice pieces of media for you to use as you think about the differences between the two bodies. So I think what best summarizes is, if you can see it, this chart here that has the checks and the X's between the roles of the board of delegates and then what's been delegated to the executive committee. This has been done via the charter and the bylaws of our organization. And so the board of delegates is one elected official from each of the 47 local government members. And a quorum of that body is 40% of the total number of delegates that are actually seated at the time. So if we only have 45 delegates, for example, it's 40% of that number. The full board has exclusive responsibility for adopting the annual budget, setting member dues or member assessments, amending the bylaws or recommending an amendment to the charter. The ultimate adoption of the charter has to go to each of the local government members, but the board of delegates would be the one to direct sending that out to the local governments. Approving the meeting schedule. We bring that before you before the board, the full board, before October of each year. Employing or terminating the executive director. And then any other matters obviously can be brought before the board. The executive committee is a subset of the board. It is the county members have an automatic appointment to the executive committee. And then there's one seat for a municipal representative that represents each of the 7 counties. And the municipal representatives sort of get together and caucus and decide who that municipal rep is going to be. Officers occupy the seats automatically. So like right now, we have a municipal member from Orange County and Johnston County and Wake County as officers. They automatically occupy those municipal seats. And the other ones are up to those municipal delegates to decide. The executive committee can do everything that the board can do except for those things I've mentioned before. And then through my employment agreement, the executive committee has the delegated authority to do my annual performance evaluation. So that's a quick overview of the executive committee and the board. Happy to answer any questions. And again, we'll plan on doing this each year this time as we get new executive committee members. And again, thanks to Beth for helping me put the stuff together. So happy to answer any questions you may have. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lee. For what it's worth, for my first time, first couple years with this organization, I kind of just showed up when I was asked to show up as much as possible. And so having this kind of background and understanding the different levels of this organization, I think it's helpful for me. And if it's a repeat, I'm sorry, but I think it's, for those who are new at least, I think it's a nice kind of reminder about how all this works. Okay, so next we have the review of the agenda. So you guys should have gotten the agenda packet in the email, and I think Beth also put that in the chat. Does anyone have any changes they'd like to make to the agenda at this point? Okay, not seeing any. Okay. In that case, let's proceed then. So the first order of business is in the presentations and recognitions category. It's a Foreign Trade Zone 93 presentation, and I'm passing this up to Lindsay to present this item. Thank you, Lindsay.
Hi. They can hear me. Okay. Before the presentation from Alchemy, so tonight we're going to be asking for the board's sponsorship for them to move their application along to the next stage. It's already been approved by our FTZ board. So Alchemy came and presented to them back in August. But I did have a slide that okay, there it is. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to remind the board, for those who don't know, or the executive committee, what a foreign trade zone is and what our role is. So we are the Foreign Trade Zone 93. So we've been granted this, we've been serving as the grantee administrator since 1983, so about 41 years at this point. As you can see on the map, our region is 15 counties for the Foreign Trade Zone, much larger than our 7 counties as CPRC. Like I mentioned, we have an FTZ board as well, but at the CPRC Board of Delegates is the final authority for like bylaws or sponsorship of applications and things like that. So that's why I'm here tonight, or that's why Alchemy's here tonight, so they can move to their next stage of their application process. So yeah, really quickly, what is a foreign trade zone for those who may not know? It really is an economic tool, so we're very grateful to have this in our region. It can expedite and encourage international trade. It can increase competitiveness and help companies retain or add jobs. And it can help companies to optimize their supply chain and streamline logistics. Our port is recognized as obviously RDU, Raleigh-Durham Airport. And then incentives, this is just a couple. So there's referral, reduction, and elimination of certain taxes. And then reduced processing fees. So it's also called a merchandising process fee. So for for companies that receive multiple shipments in 1 week, they only have to pay a one-time fee versus paying multiple fees. And then also other like possible indirect incentives are having cheaper transportation fees, or it can help companies with their inventory management. And then lastly, just some common benefits for the public. I mean, hopefully the thought is if they're having tax benefits that it can, the consumers can see decreased cost of goods. And then like I've already mentioned, encouraging domestic business helps obviously strengthen jobs in our region. So next slide, please. And then again, before Alchemy presents, this is another item that along with requesting sponsorship of their application under the consent agenda, we're also requesting an amendment to our current operator agreements that we have in place. So we have a new operator, Medical Moving Solutions. I believe they were at one of the more recent meetings, and they were presenting on their application as well. But they've been unable to find an umbrella policy less than $3 million. They believe that with their up and coming projected growth, that they'll be able to get covered for what we currently have in our operators agreements, which is $5 million for property damage. But all that to say, I spoke with some folks at the national level, and they said that it's up to us if we want to change our policies. And they gave us the green light to lessen that amount from 5 million to 3 million. Obviously, the only request is that then becomes an amendment that all operators currently and in the future can take advantage of. So I don't see that being an issue as long as the board agrees. We can then have approval to authorize them to take advantage of that lesser policy amount. And I think with that,
he's going to share his screen,
yeah,
right?
Okay, yeah, so we'll go back. And then now, Bob, you're welcome to share your screen for the Alchemy presentation.
Okay. Let's. All right, I have a little message. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Is there a way to allow me to share?
We're working on it.
Yeah, Jenny's adding you as a host right now.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, as she does that, I can introduce myself at least. My name is Bob Nevruz. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for Alchemy. I've been with the company about 10 years, and I'm going to introduce the company, let you guys know what we do, introduce the site we're trying to bring FTZ to. And I believe David Vogt is also on the line. I'll let him introduce himself as we get ready. David, do you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm David Vogt. I'm responsible for the Alchemy Garner site. So I have all site authority there and responsibility for storage. And we appreciate your time to consider us for the FTZ application. And great to meet you all.
Thanks, David. Are you guys able to see my screen now?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, how about now?
Yep.
Yeah.
A little PowerPoint that says Alchemy FTZ.
Yep. You got it.
Okay, great. Okay, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alchemy. So we're a pharmaceutical company, but we're contract pharma. So we don't make our own drugs. We don't test our own drugs. We don't package our own drugs. We don't store our own drugs. Other pharmaceutical companies are our clients. So we have between 800 and 900 different pharma companies from around the world that do business with us. Some utilize everything we do: manufacturing, packaging, lab services, and storage. Some just select one of those pillars. The three big business units we have are listed on the screen right now. One is drug product manufacturing. That's where we do commercial and clinical manufacturing of different drugs. That's not in the scope of our FTZ application. Another one is lab services. We test all those drugs, or some companies just send us samples and we don't even do manufacturing for them. Again, the lab service is not a part of this FTZ application. Where we're coming into for this FTZ application is our pharma storage business pillar. We have sites in New England, Reno, Nevada, and Garner, North Carolina, right off of 40, right beside Amazon. If you guys know where the big Amazon warehouse is out there, that's the specific site that we're want to apply for FTZ for. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the site and what we do there in an upcoming slide. Just to round out Alchemy again, so you know who we are. Again, contract pharma. You can see we're US right now, New England, but the one site we're talking about is listed here, the 5100 Jones Sausage Road. It's a shared building. There's 4 tenants in it. We have about 65,000 square feet, about a quarter of the building, not quite, but about a quarter of the building is where we have our storage business. And again, I'm going to show you pictures of that and what functions we do in there in just a second. When it comes to being compliant to programs, this is an important slide to us. So obviously, if we go for FTZ, there's a lot of things we have to comply with, and that's our business, right? FDA, DEA, a lot of different things. Oops, I'm on the wrong slide. This is, again, just showing it's a repeat of the last slide, just in a different format. Again, we're focusing on North Carolina Garner for their FTZ request. What I was saying about our regulatory history, FDA, DEA, foreign regulatory agencies also come. We're audit ready all the time. We get hundreds of audits a year, either from regulatory agencies or clients. Obviously, I said between 800 and 900 pharma clients we have. They obviously want to come and periodically audit us, make sure we're doing well. Or if they're a first-time customer, they often audit us before they give us the business. So we consider us audit ready. We definitely like sleeping at night, so we comply with all the rules and regulations. So when we build this FTZ program, we will obviously follow all the rules and regulations around that. Specifically shifting to that warehouse we have in Gardner. Right now, what I'm showing is the 65,000 square feet we occupy in the building. Like I said, it's about a quarter of the building. The green side of the page, this is where we have what we call our ambient racking, pallet racking. It's high pile storage. We can store a lot of material in there. Conditions are between 20 and 25 C. We call it control room temperature. So we store up to 3,400 pallets can be stored in there on that side. On the blue side, now there's a demising wall in between. There is a pass-through for forklifts, trucks, and man doors and things like that. But on the blue side, this is our cold storage side. So you see the three big squares in the middle of the page. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but these three big ones here. They're refrigerators and freezers. This one big one at the top can be run at 5C or negative 20C. The one in the middle, you can run it, portions of it at negative 20C, negative 40C, and the outside part of that, you store things at negative 80C. Really, really cold. You have to wear protective PPE when you go in there. There's alarms that go off if you're in there too long, et cetera, et cetera. And the one at the bottom, again, can either be 5C or negative 20. On the right wall, you see several boxes. Those are walk-in stability chambers. So in the pharma business, you have to prove expiry dates. So we have to hold things in there 5 years, 5+ years at different conditions. Some are high humidity conditions, so some are high temperature. And the idea is you go in there and pull a sample every once in a while and you check to make sure, oh, after 2 years, it's still good and effective. After 3 years at these conditions, it's good and effective. So the stability program is a very important part of the business model that we have there. We do have room to grow and add future units. You see there's a space between the two things I spoke of. That's anticipated for more walk-in cold storage in the future. Towards the bottom of the page, you see the last arrow on the bottom right points to what we call the aliquot booth. This is where we're storing all this material for clients. If they want us to pull a sample and send it to a lab, we can take it to this booth, pull a little sample, and then we can send it to a lab. Hopefully one of ours. We have several in the RTP region, but it could be another lab. It could be back to them. But there's opportunity for us to aliquot. On the outside, the white, under the red, under the green and the blue, you see a couple arrows. We have to hold these conditions at all times. So we not only have a backup generator, we have a redundant backup generator. So if we were to lose power, a backup generator would kick on. If for some reason it doesn't, a second generator would kick on. We can't lose conditions. Again, like I said, we could have studies that are in year 5. We don't want to lose conditions at any point. We also have a 13,000-gallon bulk liquid nitrogen tank out there. That's used from some of our cryo storage. You see the real long arrow on the right side of the page pointing to a bunch of small vessels. These vessels are even colder than we have in walk-ins. You can get negative 135C to like negative 190C using liquid nitrogen to get it down there. So really specialized temperatures for our pharma clients. When it comes to our cold storage, they all have refrigeration systems that are redundant, a system A and a system B. So if system A fails, system B kicks on. So on the mechanical side, we have redundancy built in too. So when we talk to our pharma clients, any kind of storage they need, we can house in here, and we have room to expand within the footprint. There's plenty of open floor space to put more materials in there. Let's see, sorry. A few other things to keep in mind when we look at FTZ. There's a certain level of security and accountability that you have to take into mind. And because we are a pharma company, we already have badge readers on our buildings. We already have cameras, both inside and outside on our buildings, and we have an intrusion system also. So from a security standpoint, we're pretty robust as we are. You can see a little picture of the outside of the building there. Again, we have that 1/4 of the building, about 65,000 square foot. If you remember from the drawing, when I said one side's the racking side, You can see this is a picture when we first opened, empty racking, but you can see it. We have pretty tight aisles there. We use a guide wire so we can utilize space as much as possible. So the forklift goes right on that wire so it doesn't bang into anything, and it goes high up. You can see how many high pile storage opportunities we have. On the right upper side, that's some of our stability chambers there. Again, they can different temperatures and humidities to check the expiry of drugs. And then the bottom right picture is a sample of how inside one of our big cold rooms look. Again, it can be 5C, -20, -40, or -80C. We typically have what we call high density storage. So these are racks that move back and forth, and you can put things on the rack in there. So that gives you a pretty good idea, hopefully, of how our facility looks, what kind of business we do. We do business with a lot of different pharma clients for certain. Advantages and benefits of the FTZ for us. Lindsay covered it much more eloquently than I could, but obviously there's opportunities to defer or not pay certain tariffs or taxes that can be passed on to our clients and then ultimately to customers, which help us be more competitive, right? If we can defer or eliminate some of those duties or tariffs. And obviously, the better we do, the more we grow, more jobs can come to our areas. It does supplement some of our business in the RTP area. We have a manufacturing site in Morrisville. We have a lab in Morrisville, a lab in Durham, and an offsite warehouse also in Morrisville. But again, this specific ask for FTZ, the application we intend to put forward is solely for our Garner site. So I know I talk fast, but I can go back on slides if you have any questions. Or David, I don't know if you want to supplement anything I said. David is the site leader and owns this business, so he could speak in more detail to some of the capabilities we have at the site.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, Bob. I think you did a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I see a question from Gene.
Yeah, hi, this is Jean Hamilton from Orange County. Thank you so much for that presentation. It is
Hi, Jean.
fascinating, your business and how you can see kind of help pharmaceuticals be safe. And so, and you end with talking about, you know, jobs and good paying jobs. So I'm wondering how many folks are employed at your Garner site and what's your average salary?
I can't answer that. David can probably lead into it. Now I must preface, we just opened this year, so we're still growing. So David, maybe you could talk about what we have now and what's our projection too.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we have 9 employees. We have a number of contractors, of course, working on construction and building there as well, putting new stability chambers in place, et cetera. We expect to grow this site here to probably 25 to 30 folks once it's fully built out. And so I would say the average salary, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head, but I would say that we're probably sitting in the $60,000-$70,000 range for average salary for the folks that we have there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any additional questions? Well, thank you so much, Bob and Doug. Lindsay, just to clarify, is the potential action to be approved the FTZ designation and also the amendment that you mentioned? How's it supposed to work for the board here?
Yeah, so the 2 consent items are the amendment, which is obviously separate of the Alchemy conversation, which for Alchemy, we're just requesting sponsorship of their application. It's just the process that we take, and then now they're welcome to send their application off to USFTZ, who then does all of their fun things to approve it. And then, you know, I'll work with Bob and David, and then we hopefully get them their FTZ designation. But yes, for tonight, we just need the approval of the sponsorship and then approval of the amendment requests for the operators agreements.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any objections to those two items going on the consent agenda? All right, we'll move it to that, and thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Bob and David. I'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Great. Okay, so moving on. Next, we have the public hearing section, and we have a public hearing related to the HUD Pathways Removing Obstacles to Housing grant. And this is off to Lindsay again. So Lindsay, take it away.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, we are applying for the HUD Pathways to Removing Obstacles, so the HUD Pro grant for short. And one of HUD's requirements is to actually have a public hearing prior to submittal of the application. And it's just an opportunity, obviously, for the public to come and provide feedback or comments, ask questions. We don't have anyone here, and we didn't receive any feedback via email or phone. We will be posting a draft of our application online when it's ready to go next week, so people can provide comment that way. But we'll still go through, I have a couple slides. So this is the second year that HUD has done this program. So it's still fairly new. It's undetermined yet if they'll be continuing to have other rounds. I'm hopeful that they will, but basically the whole the main objective of the funding program is to remove barriers to affordable housing and seek ways to increase housing production or lower housing costs over long-term periods. Eligible applicants are states and local governments, regional planning organizations, and multi-jurisdictional entities. Eligible uses are pretty broad, basically activities that further develop, evaluate, and implement housing policy plans, improve housing strategies, and facilitate affordable housing production, which would be obviously new development or preservation of our current housing stock. And the grant size is a minimum of 1 million, maximum of 7 million. And I think I already said this, but it's due October 15th. Next slide, thank you. So here's our proposal. And so we are planning on trying to develop some sort of regional revolving loan fund, and Apex is our lucky community that we are going to be starting the process in. And so basically we would be requesting funding to start a housing and preservation revolving loan fund, with the goal of hopefully developing it into more of a multi-jurisdictional or regional fund. We know that gap financing is an issue for a lot of affordable housing developers and or nonprofits when they're trying to acquire land or multifamily units. And so it's hard for them sometimes to compete with private developers. So this gap financing tool can be provided either on a short-term loan agreement or a longer term loan agreement. Obviously, these would be favorable loan terms, but the idea would be that then when the loan's paid back, it would create sort of a sustainable pool of funding. And the two main barriers being addressed would be obviously we need more funding for housing, so increasing access to financing, and then also the ability to compete more with affordable housing developers or nonprofits compete with private developers. And then the other component is conducting research around affordable housing finance tools in general. And this isn't like a lobbying effort, but what are other states doing that our state's not allowing us to do, for example, could be one conversation there. And also, lastly, would be engagement with affordable housing developers and nonprofits to understand what they need versus the regulatory requirements that are happening at various local levels. Because a lot of times I'm in a conversation where, a local government might not even know the affordable housing developer needs XYZ to build or things like that. But also just engaging publicly owned land, or excuse me, I don't know what I meant when engage, I didn't mean to say public, engage mission-based and faith-based organizations to also better understand what they need to utilize their land for development, because a lot of those types of organizations are sitting on prime land for development. And obviously a lot of education and understanding how to take advantage of things like low-income housing tax credit or things like that could be beneficial for them to get into the development space, which I know could probably be a scary thing for those types of organizations without knowing what the process and the steps look like. So we're still thinking through a lot of kinks, but that's a high level overview.
So if I may, I wanted to weigh in on a couple things before the chair opens the public hearing. Number one, I want to thank Lindsay and Hunter Fillers, and I know several other staff members have been working on this furiously over the last week. This is a grant that came up very quickly, has a really short timeline to get an application together, and then I'm not crazy about these types of NOFOs, but they actually make you do the public hearing before you sort of get everything put together. So it really squeezes the timeline to get a good application together. The other thing I want to say is this is directed toward Apex, not because our chair is from Apex, but it's because HUD has identified some priority areas where this type of application would be more competitive. Apex was one of several communities that we reached out to last week. And I think understandably, several of those communities, because of potential matching requirements, just were not in a position to be able to take part. So we've done, well, not we, they have done some really good due diligence to see who we could get on board. The good thing about this is, if we were to get this, we can use Apex sort of as a pilot and then hopefully be able to, spread this out across the region. So I just wanted to add a little bit of the other thing I wanted to say is we were also asked by the governor's office to take a close look at this. I think the state wanted to try to apply for this on their own, but couldn't find a department to really assign this to. So that sort of dropped on us about a week and a half ago as well. So they've been really hustling to get this put together. So just wanted to give some shout outs to staff for once again doing some good work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And it's a very exciting application. So now's the time, I guess we're, the first part is for questions or comments from the board. Well, I'll do a quick comment. Our meeting last night, our town council meeting last night, we had a full room, and a lot of it was about housing. So I think it's very timely, and it's not just Apex that I think is dealing with this issue of affordability that seems to be becoming harder and harder to achieve for a lot of people. So hopefully this will be successful, and we can learn the best practices spread amongst the whole region, because I think it's not just one community that's dealing with it. Any other questions from the board before we open up the public forum?
This is Heidi. I have just a quick comment too, Brett. I just really want to thank the Central Pines Regional Council staff, Lindsay and team for working on this. It's great. I think that revolving loan fund is a very significant tool to try to help local developers and faith communities, nonprofits. And I just think it's really, really exciting that you all are pursuing this opportunity. I'm pretty sure in Durham we have revolving loan funds at the city and the county. At least we've set some ARPA funding aside for that. I'm not positive if it's in action yet, but and also there's been a lot of work in Durham around simplifying development codes to make affordable development more feasible for local, smaller developers. So anyway, I think it's great. I just really wanted to commend you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Carter. I think just a quick comment, I think Apex is trying to do whatever we can, trying to maybe throw everything against the wall, see what sticks as far as improving this or addressing this problem. And I think Durham's been a leader in that as well. So thank you for your work as well. Okay, so I guess now the time for anybody else before we have a public comment, which I'm not sure how that works in this format, but anybody else have any comments or questions from the board or the committee? Okay. Now I will open up the public hearing section. So do we have anybody from the public that wants to speak to this? Okay. Lee and Lindsay, I guess there's nobody, I assume?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, great. Okay. I will now close the public hearing. And I guess there's no other action besides closing the hearing, right?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay, great. Sorry, first time doing this, I'm not quite sure how the procedure works.
You did great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Moving on. Now we're on to the business section, and we are going to talk about several things, starting with the Connected Region 2050 plan that Lee talked about a little bit at the board meeting last month, and some other items related to personnel and the subcommittees. So I will pass it off to Lee. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, good evening, everybody. So the first item is to go into a little more detail around Connected Region, and on the agenda, and of course, if the executive committee wants to talk longer than this, it's your prerogative, but we do have other items to get to, and we'll be talking about this hopefully for many months to come. So what this is intended to be is really more of a high-level conversation, and I think 30 minutes would be a good amount of time to dedicate to it. If it goes that long, if it doesn't, that's fine. But we'll time about 30 minutes, and if it's okay with the chair, if we need to come back to another meeting, we can do that. But just to make sure we get y'all out of here before 8, that would be my suggestion. So thank you, first of all, for really engaging a board meeting in August around this concept of Connected Region. And for those that maybe were not able to be at the board meeting, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. First of all, I think it's no surprise. It's interesting, a portion of 540 opened today. We know that we are going to continue to grow at a very rapid rate as a region. 4 million people in a 10-county area in the next generation or so. That's a lot of people. We've seen a lot of growth. We've seen a lot of success as a region. I think we all can agree that we want to continue to have this region be one of the most desirable ones in the country. And we also know that with any growing region or any place, there are challenges that as elected officials and appointed officials that we've got to all work together on. And we all are connected. The other thing I'll say is this growth, the chair talked about when we were formed in 1959 and we were looking at a 3-county area. Well, the growth is now much more than just Wake, Durham, and Orange. This growth is impacting Johnston and Chatham and Lee and Franklin, and will continue to move out across our region. And I think the time is now to really think about how all of this is connected, how all of it works together. There are a lot of great plans out there. There's a lot of great cooperation. But I would say that in a 10-county sense around land use and really thinking about different scenarios on how the region might grow over the next 30 to 40 years, there's some gaps. And we want to be able to propose a process to help the local governments think about how they can continue to make good decisions into the future. Last thing I'll say before I dive in is you're not going to be alone in doing this. This isn't some crazy idea I've thought about. I think about a lot of crazy ideas, but I don't think this is one of them. A lot of regions that are 4 million or more, about 70% of them have some sort of regional vision or regional plan, even New York City. And you remember seeing the video about that at the last meeting. So again, I want to thank staff. They've done a lot of hard work in thinking about this scope of work. We've gotten some good input already from some of our regional partners around this. This is still a draft, but I wanted to just talk through what we envision would be about a 3-year process to get to the first connected region plan or guide. And then obviously, funding is an important part of that, about that. And I want to talk a little bit about sort of a funding strategy if we are not able to raise money. I hope we can raise funds to offset what I'm showing you tonight. And we're looking for different opportunities. We even had Connected Region for a little bit of time in the HUD Pro grant and made a decision that it would probably not make it as competitive as it needs to be. And so we pulled it out. So we're looking for all sorts of opportunities for funding. So if it's okay, I think what I'll do, and I'm not going to bore you with reading through a scope of work. We sent it out to you. I think at a very high level, I'll talk about the deliverables for each task, see if you have any thoughts or any questions, and then we can move on to the next one, and then we can talk about the funding. So if you look at the scope of work document, it says Thrive Central NC Connected Region 2050 scope of work. If you scroll down, you see number 1, project scope and foundation. So this is what we call task 1. And that's really building what we're talking about today, right? Building the scope of work. So we're working on the scope of work. One thing I want to stop and talk about is one thing that I think is really important is us really emphasizing our data capabilities and our capabilities of being able to aggregate, again, all the good work that you all are doing into regional level documents that can help better articulate what the region needs. And so we are right now beginning to work on a pilot regional CIP document that would actually aggregate all the capital improvement plans of all the local governments in the region. And we would be able to, through GIS and mapping and spreadsheets and probably some sort of higher level paper, articulate what the capital needs are of the region. And I think that would help appointed officials, elected officials with grants and talking to federal delegations or just telling the story of how the growth is impacting the region in terms of capital. And then, so that's one thing we'll do to sort of show the pilot, and then we'll be gathering other plans further along in the Connected Region project. We're talking right now about the scope of work and funding requests. We want to make sure that we really hear from folks around whether this resonates. So we plan to go out to the local governments in each of the 10 counties and do sort of county by county pop-up events to do exactly what we're doing tonight, talk about the scope of work, make sure we're not missing anything in a major way, showing the process and then finalizing the scope of work. And we're hoping to have that done by maybe February of 2025. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and see if anybody has any questions about that first section. All right. And if you need to go back, that's fine. I'm going to keep moving. So second are some foundational elements. And this is really establishing the why and making sure that folks understand that Central Pines is the appropriate agency to help facilitate this and to really gather excitement and buy-in around the process. And this is where we really appreciate Capital Broadcasting has already committed $300,000 in-kind support to this project. And through that, they're doing videos, surveying, helping to write articles, developing the website for this project, and a fundraising strategy, meeting with us every 2 weeks to just think about strategy. So a lot of that work is only possible because of Capital Broadcasting's commitment. I've met with Jimmy Goodman personally. He wants to be involved, and it's really great. It's great to be able to say that a private enterprise is already committed to this and committed their resources to the effort. All right, I'm gonna keep rolling. So number 3 are feedback loops. So any effective plan has got to have any strategy, right? You have to have feedback because you got to be able to adjust, listen, hear what people have to say. So a few ideas around that is an ambassador group, which be a higher level, sort of C-level group that would sort of help guide the process at a very high level. We would want that group to be sort of equally represented by local government, private business, and then community groups. And so if you have any ideas of who would be good on that ambassador group, I'd love to hear. We haven't started forming that group, but we'll be doing that very soon. The other group is more of a technical advisory group. So almost think about this for those that work with the MPOs. The ambassador group would be the policy board, and then the technical advisory group would be the technical committee, the TCC. These would be folks that really are sort of doing the work day to day that could help us on a more often than we'd be able to get the ambassador group together. So we'd want to have a good, diverse group of technical experts to help guide the process. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit more about the subcommittees later on, but a wonderful opportunity to begin engaging our subcommittees in the work as well. So that's where we see some of the feedback loops. And of course, the board and the executive committee is included in that too, but these are groups outside of our existing structure that we would be engaging in the work. All right, so 4 is engagement. So get the feedback loops in place, begin talking about how we would actually engage everybody, the community, local governments, whomever needs, community groups, whoever needs to be engaged. This is part of what Capital Broadcasting will help us with, and others, is thinking about an engagement strategy. And really being mindful that we're being inclusive and how we're doing that. So we have a few ideas already, but we're also, you'll see a fairly large sum of money in there. We realize that to get engagement, we may actually have to pay stipends or provide some other means to allow people to engage, and we want to make sure we have appropriate dollars budgeted for that. And of course, whenever we get an engagement strategy draft, we would be bringing that back to you for feedback. So again, that's a really important part of the process. So engagement is task 4. So wanted to see if there's anybody that has any comments about that. All right.
Hold on, Lee. I got a question.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, of course. I was not at the August meeting, so I have a lot of catching up to do. And I guess as I'm hearing and some of this comments, it's about, well, I'll start with engagement and go back up. It's not clear to me what we're engaging people about. And I think I'm struggling because if you gather the CIPs, right, the capital investment plans.
Mhm.
When I think about like Orange County's capital investment plan and the a lot of work that we put into it, a lot of it reflects the needs of the county.
Sure.
Right, the things we haven't done that can't be done in another county, like our schools, or thinking we have on plans a crisis diversion center, which we very much want in the county. So it's not clear to me, what are the items that are going to come out of the CIP that are going to be regional, and as well as what different values and visions. So I kind of
Right.
stuck.
No, I understand. So the CIP is only one element of many different elements that we'll be developing through this process. So the CIP is just sort of a pilot, step one. And really the CIPs are more about us demonstrating regionally what the needs are. We're not, it's not an intent through this process that we would be trying to influence how Orange County or another county develops their CIP. It's just another tool to show what the overall need is in the region. Where the engagement,
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you talk about needs as a region, it's like what, again, will the CIP even show that, right? Because what are we looking for?
So I think the CIPs are, again, one piece of, so we're going to also later in the process be aggregating housing plans, aggregating land use plans, aggregating other transit plans, just to show where the current state is and what the region is doing on a whole. Where the engagement and the visioning come in are when we begin to look at the scenario planning and looking at what how the region could develop based on different scenarios. And that's where the engagement is going to be really important. So as an example, we may do, and I don't know the exact number yet, we may do 4 or 5 different scenarios for the region around, if we keep all land use planning the same, do not change a thing. Here's how much land will be developed. Here's the highways that will be developed. Here's the impact on traffic, the impact on water and sewer, and the fiscal impact on each of the local governments for the next 30 years. Okay, well, what if we did a different scenario where we did a lot more infill development and changed that up a little bit? Okay, the future would look like this. What if we decided to do maximum urban development across the whole region? It would look like this. And so that is where the different possibilities will arise and where the engagement comes in and where the community and you all can say, oh, I didn't realize that the region could look like this. Maybe we ought to talk about a vision where we go in this direction and then develop vision and strategy around that. So it's more about land use and thinking about a strategy region-wide, and that's where the engagement is going to be really important.
Okay, so, as you're talking, I'm like, because we're in our Orange County 2050 land use process.
Sure.
And it is so hard and painful. In fact, this evening, there's a community engagement around our land use plan that I'm not at. I'm just concerned that we're going to put a lot of money into a study that won't go anywhere because it's hard enough within the counties to deal with land use issues. So that's just got to put that out there.
Right.
That, yeah, because we had consultants for Orange County, just brought different scenarios, and it's hard. And it's hard to engage the public, but it's also just the electeds as well. And just, again, it's hard enough within the county. When we talk regionally, I'm just wondering, are we ready for that?
I understand. I agree. It will not be easy. But I think looking at other regions and plans that they have, I think if we don't start now, it'll just become harder and harder and more complex as the region continues to grow. So I completely agree with you. It's not an easy project, but I do think it's one worth pursuing.
Thank you.
Hamilton, I recommend actually, if you have a chance, to go back and watch that meeting in August, because I thought there were some really compelling speakers from other regions. The one, Columbus, Ohio, was one of the guys, and he talked about, they did this plan, and a lot of the counties and municipalities were kind of skeptical at the beginning, but once the plan was, that process happened, there was a lot of buy-in from these different places across, not just the core of Columbus, but the other kind of outlying areas that, oh, okay, so we're going to be inspired a little bit to kind of reflect this vision in our own plans. And it was meant to kind of inspire, not to tell Orange County or whatever the equivalent was in Ohio what to do. And I thought that was really an interesting kind of scenario where there were skeptics that kind of came around and saw the value in it in the end.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I will go back and look.
Lee, can I make a comment? Bill Carver from Lee County.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
I'm not an expert in AI, but the little bit I've dabbled in, it seems like this is the quintessential example of where AI could help you aggregate data, digest it, and come up with some strategies on a very, a number of strategies based on the criteria that you set for it. Now, again, I'm not an expert on AI, but I wonder whether or not you've thought about any of those kind of tools that are coming alive these days in that area.
Yes, sir, I have. Sorry. Yeah, I have. And interestingly enough, another thing we're doing right now, or I'm doing, is I've got some budget and tax information from all the local governments in the region. I've been wanting to do sort of a budget and tax summary for all the local governments every year. And I used AI to generate a outline on what some of the important points were. So I agree. And actually we've had a staff member who said similar things. So yes, I'm all for seeing how that may be able to help us, and that'll help keep the costs down as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question, please. I just want to know, as far as engagement strategy, are we, at the end of the thought process, are we gonna try to, will it be I want to say it, maybe someone with the most need, that we're going to focus on a particular thing, like maybe in that way, the group with the most need? Because I'm not quite getting it, how we're going to, because we're talking about the whole region. So the whole region, usually, we all discuss everything and we make decisions. But I'm just trying to understand at the end of the road, are we going to just kind of maybe be focusing on where's the most need?
Ms. Laney, that's a great question. And what I can say is the engagement strategy hasn't been started yet. So I think conversations like this and others are going to be really important to formulate the strategy. So we'll begin working on an engagement strategy and bring it back to you all for input and ultimate approval. And yes, I mean, I think it's going to be important to think about how we can get input from multiple people, but also realize that the region's very large. And so, I mean, we could spend a ton of money on engagement, right? So we've got to find that balance of where we can get appropriate engagement, but also make sure we can stay on a timeline to be able to do this in about 3 years. So if we move forward with this, then I think we're going to have a lot more conversation about what the appropriate engagement strategy is, and would love to get your input on that.
Hey, Lee, can I ask a kind of a little different question, maybe similar to what Ms. Laney? It's a regional plan, but do you anticipate and have other plans that you've reviewed kind of as models? Do they kind of zoom in on certain areas and provide extra detail or engagement maybe, or whatever the thing is that needed for smaller areas that are kind of embedded within a larger plan?
Yes, there are some plans that do that. There are some plans that maybe provide a high level vision and strategy, but then maybe they'll take a corridor or a pilot community and sort of that obviously agrees to want to try some of this and begin to pilot some of the strategies to think about how it may work. Again, this is just a draft and we can tweak it in any way that you all want. I think my goal has been is to try to at least get, since we don't have a regional vision for the area, to try to develop something that we can get going on at a cost where we don't have to bring in multiple consultants and really inflate the cost, right? To be able to deliver this thing at a reasonable price as quickly as we can. We can certainly focus in on smaller areas, but I think it could add cost and some time. What I would say is that perhaps what we're thinking about is once we can get the plan done, then we can actually see where we can pilot and test some of these concepts in individual communities to see how effective they are and learn as we begin to update the plan. And again, what I want to say is, part of what I want to say is that what we're envisioning here is not a one-off. This is really trying to put into place something that can be sustained and be updated continually. Because we've done this before. We've tried to do this before. There was a effort 30 years ago. I forgot the name of it. I had some of it displayed at the board meeting, and it looks like they went through some of the process, got some of the work done, and then it never got implemented. And I don't want that to happen. If we're going to take the effort, then I want to get to implementation. Okay, so I think we're about at 30 minutes and I'm about halfway done. So what we could do, so let me give you a couple of thoughts, because again, I want to make sure that we can have really good discussions, and I'm happy if you want me to bring this back in November for part 2. We could go through the second half of it. Or we could go a little bit longer if you want. It's up to you, but there's still quite a bit to cover. And I don't I don't want to shortchange anything because it's too important. So I don't want to start rushing and then we miss out on some important conversation.
Hey, Lee, Bill Carver again from Lee County. Before we leave,
Yes, sir.
in task 2, it
Yes,
kind
sir.
of caught my attention that this is an order of magnitude better than the cost of everything else that you've itemized. I understand there's a $300,000 grant, I guess you'd call it, to complement that, but that still leaves 300,000. Can you give me an idea why that's so expensive?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting that kind of talent and the type of work that they're doing. And also they're doing a lot of advertising. So it's not cheap. So we've had 2 or 3 individuals with Capital Broadcasting that have been engaged with us for several months now, developing very nice videos, developing a website, developing articles, really pushing that stuff out on the website, and marketing budgets that I've seen, they're pretty expensive. So it's a big ticket item, but I think it's really important as we build that foundation.
Thank you. So I guess you're trying to build a consensus that in fact this is something that people are going to value and they want to be part of it, I presume.
Yes, sir. That's right. And just raise the profile of the organization. Yes. Yeah.
Lee, I would suggest that we table this and do the second half, assuming that there's no timeliness issues doing it in November.
Okay.
Make sure we get a chance to hear the personnel thing in the subcommittee.
Yep.
I just think that there's going to be even more discussion about the second half that would potentially rush the other items.
That's fine. No problem at all. All right. So, Mr. Chair, if you're okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Yes.
All right. So the next item is some proposed amendments to the personnel policy. So I'll pass it off to our Assistant Executive Director for that.
Yes, and I just wanted to let you know that Beth Davis, our clerk, it's storming really bad where she is. And so she has been kicked off, and I don't know if she has power. So bear with us as Lindsay and I may have to clerk in a minute. So Brett, Beth's not there anymore. And for, okay, so for the personnel policy, we just have one addition and one kind of change within something that's already there. So here at CPRC, we have a lot of conversations with our staff around how we can engage more with each other and with our member communities. And one thing that comes up a lot is volunteering within our communities. I know I've been here 8 years and we have done a couple of group volunteer activities in the community. One, I remember doing a Habitat house in Durham one day afternoon with the majority of our staff, but we've never had a way to formalize that. And so we are proposing a change to the personnel policy to allow volunteer leave, which is 7.5 hours per fiscal year. And just to help further our mission of supporting our member communities, and a requirement would be that it has to be within our 7 counties. But obviously our mission is pretty broad. So we've kind of left that piece open for employees to determine where they would like to volunteer. So that's piece number 1. And then the second piece is amendment to our sick leave policy, which currently states that employees can only transfer over 240 hours of sick leave if they come from another local government in North Carolina or the state of North Carolina. And we are just asking to remove that limit. Currently it can be, the executive director can waive that anyways. And so for recruitment reasons, especially for higher level employees that may quote unquote, be in the system for longer. Don't want to deter people for applying for our jobs. But I'm happy to take questions on either one of those. All right.
Okay, not seeing any. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Yep.
Next, we have Lee with the Central Pines Regional Council subcommittees. An update on those.
Yes,
Please.
and thank you. And just those personnel items will be on your consent agenda for adoption.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot to ask that.
No worries.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. That objection, we're
No
going to
problem.
place on the consent agenda as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so really excited to give you an update on our subcommittees. When we came to the board several months ago to talk about some changes in the cadence of the full board versus the executive committee, the other prong of that was to establish subcommittees that aligned with the strategic focus areas of the organization. Part of the reason for doing that was to make sure that board members, others in local governments, community groups, or other stakeholders had the opportunity to better engage with the regional council around the 6 areas that we are broadly involved with. Another part of this was to hopefully get elected officials that maybe are not on the board, but have an interest in some of the things that the regional council is doing, giving them the opportunity to get engaged in some different areas. And through that engagement, you may find somebody that might want to step up and take a board seat when any of you decide to move on to do something else or anything like that. So there's multiple reasons for these subcommittees. The other part of this for me personally is to make sure that our staff is getting more exposure and more interaction with the board members and others. I think it helps develop them. I think it provides opportunity for staff to hear how their programs are aligning and if there are new opportunities or if we need to maybe think about not doing something and how that aligns with what communities and our local government members need. So when we developed these, we asked board members if they could to try and volunteer for at least one of the subcommittees. And so I just wanted to provide an update to you on where we were with recruitment. Really appreciate the individuals who have stepped up to chair each of the subcommittees, and those are listed at the top of each of the subcommittees. And then I also have who the staff lead is. And then we have under that who the volunteers are so far. So happy to answering questions. I'd ask if any of you all have an interest in one of these subcommittees, if you can reach out to me after the meeting and let me know, or if any of you are willing and able to maybe reach out to some of our board members or other. I have not really broadcast this widely yet to other elected officials. I was going to give some time for the board members to volunteer and sort of see where the numbers shook out. But if you've got somebody on your board that you know would be great for one of these subcommittees, feel free to push it to them and ask them if they have interest as well. So this is just more of an update. Happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Lee, can you speak to the process by which whatever these subcommittees discuss, how that's supposed to kind of rise up to the executive committee or the board as far as an item to take up?
Yeah, we haven't quite perfected that yet, but I think as we've been talking, at a minimum, we would want the committee chairs and the staff leads to work together on providing some sort of frequent update or regular updates to the board and executive committee, whether that's some sort of written update, Perhaps there'd be a presentation each year from each of the subcommittees. We're still working through those, but I think we also, once these subcommittees are formed, we want to get some input from them on how they feel like they can best articulate what they're doing to the board. But yes, that's a great point. Part of this too is to make sure that we have better connection to the board on the work that's going on in each of these areas. And I'm open to any suggestions you all may have on how we can do that effectively. All right. Well, Mr. Chair, there's really no action that's necessary on this. It's more of an update. Again, if you have any interest in the subcommittees, let me know. But also, if you don't mind, I'd love for y'all to help me publicize and try to recruit some folks to increase the numbers. So thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I just, my personal opinion is, I think sometimes objectives as far as like a product that can come from this, or like a report about like, we've discussed this topic and we really think this should be, a methodology by which it can get raised up and
Sure.
attached to the budget of this organization, or some action taken. I think thinking about how that could work short term and long term, I think would be really useful for the viability of these committees. Just a comment from mine.
Thank you.
Okay. So before we move on, any other comments about that? No? Okay, not seeing any hands. Okay, thank you so much. Now we're on to the consent agenda vote. And just as a review of the items on the consent agenda, we have the, listed here. We have the draft minutes from the June 2024 meeting, the FTZ approval for the alchemy that we heard about, and just to clarify, would the other resolution regarding the insurance or the liability also be a part of that, or is that going to be like a subpart B item?
It's both items, yes, sir. Both items, the insurance and the alchemy site approval.
Okay, so we'll call that B1, B2. The personnel policy update that Jenny described, as well as a budget amendment. Maybe Lee or somebody, can you talk briefly about that budget amendment and the items in or the content of that? As a reminder for us. Sorry.
I know Hope's traveling. Hope, if you're on and able to talk about it, that would be awesome. If you can't, I can do it.
Hey Lee, I'll do my best. I hope everyone can hear me. So the majority of those, it's increasing the budget about 2.4 million. The majority of that amount is really adjusting. There's a lot of amendments to adjust the aging. That's a reduction to the budget, but it's just aligning with the state appropriation, because we didn't have those allocation numbers until after we approved the budget for the year. So it's aligning a whole lot of that together. It's also increasing the housing division by 822,000 with the addition of some new funding awards. It's increasing community economic development by about 713,000 with, again, additional funds. And the other piece that was a large, a big, was also another one, the transportation demand management project. That was also like aging. We're just kind of truing up those numbers with the final state appropriation numbers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there for that. I guess hopefully we've all read it as well and saw the exact numbers for that. Okay, so I guess Beth, do I have a motion? Oh, sorry. First of all, does anyone want to remove any items from the consent for more discussion or later consideration? Okay, not seeing anybody. Do we have a motion? Okay, so now do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve this consent agenda, Gene Hamilton, Orange County.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Wilma Laney, second.
Thank you, Wilma. Okay, so I guess I'll pass it over to
Pass it to
Jenny
Jenny.
for the roll call vote.
I'm back.
Oh,
That's back.
Okay,
okay.
great.
Back online. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Sorry, we
Glad you got
had some
internet back.
thunderstorms, so I got kicked off, but I'm back. All
Okay,
right.
great. Wonderful.
Just a reminder, 1 vote per jurisdiction. Aberdeen,
Aberdeen, aye.
Apex,
Apex, aye.
Carrboro, Chatham County, City of Durham, Durham County,
Aye.
Johnston County, Lee County,
Bill Carver, aye.
Moore County, Orange County,
Gene Hamilton, aye.
Pittsburgh,
Town of Pittsburgh, Pamela Baldwin, aye.
Sanford, Selma, Wake County.
Susan Evans, aye.
All right, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Next, we have the Executive Director's Report, and I'll hand it over to Lee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. First of all, I want to personally thank the chair and Ms. Laney for joining me last week before last or last week. We visited Pine Bluff and had a wonderful conversation with their mayor about joining Central Pines. And as a reminder, this is beginning to implement what the board approved in August, which is approaching the final 4 local governments that are not members and offering them a year of membership at no cost. And we had a great, I can, obviously the chair can talk about it during his report, but had a great meeting. The mayor had said he had already talked to a number of the board members there, and they intended to, at a meeting last week, vote on membership. I've been out of town, so I've not had a chance to follow up with the mayor yet, but I plan to do that probably tomorrow, just to see if they were able to do it. But he was very excited about the opportunity. So again, thank you, Ms. Laney, and thank you, Mr. Gant, for joining me for that discussion. The second thing is another piece of good news. Elena's not on the meeting tonight because she's at home with her wonderful new addition to the family. Casey was born on the 18th September at 6:15 in the morning, and everybody's doing well. And we're so excited for her and Chris and the entire family. And we will see her back after the holidays. So she'll be back in January is the plan. So we're very, very excited about that. And yeah, I just got back from the International City County Managers Association. So I actually drove to Pittsburgh and drove back today. And it was a great meeting. Got to see many of the managers from the region there. And it was a great gathering of about 4,500 managers from across the globe. And again, really enjoyed it. So just trying to catch up a little bit. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. As far as the chair's report goes, maybe I'll chat briefly about our meeting with Pine Bluff. I'm really happy to do this because there's only a handful of local governments left that are not part of this organization. And I think the combination of having this period that they can understand and utilize some of the resources that this organization provides without cost, especially when some of them have tight budgets. I think we all have tight budgets, I guess. That combined with the regional vision that we're creating with this connected plan in the future, as well as all the work that we do as a regional council, I really think hopefully it's an easy sales job, and I'm happy to take part in any other meetings that we have, talk about how much I appreciate being part of Apex and being on this part of the organization, and how much I think that the networking and the connections that we make with each other in the executive committee meetings, and especially in the board meetings, learning the best practices, learning what's going on across the region, across different municipalities and counties, is a lot of value, way more than I think the cost to each of these governments is. So I'm hopeful that we can get connected with the other municipalities and go meet their mayor or manager, whoever is appropriate, and get everybody on board in the whole coverage for the whole region. So looking forward to. I hadn't visited Pine Bluff before, and it is a well-named community. There's pine trees all over all around their city hall or town hall. So looking forward to meeting with the other ones. And with that, it's time for the around the region. Instead of a prompt, I just thought that, and especially because we're a little more informal with this executive committee, I just want to have some volunteers. Hopefully, we'll talk about what's going on in their local government. And I'll open the floor. Anybody raise hands or speak up?
Hey, Brett, this is Bill Carver from Lee County. I just wanted to mention that one of the ongoing dialogues is, how do you grow in a county that has a culture, still recognizing that economic development is so important to pay the bills, and still preserve the appetite or the ambiance of the culture. And recently I attended a groundbreaking for Kiowa Kirin, which is an organization that is bringing a $200 million investment to Lee County in the pharmaceuticals arena. They're looking for vaccines to make a difference in hard to treat diseases. Okay, but they also come from Japan, and there's a combination of not only bringing the economic development, but there's also the cultural item, and they're very eager to get to know us. And I found that really exciting. The other point is that we just recently received from the North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund about $500,000 to start working on farmland preservation. So you can see this as a complementary thing. How do we go ahead and save our farmland and at the same time develop and complement our culture as a whole without robbing either one? And I have a tip of the hat to the our SAGA, Sanford Area Growth Alliance, because they're very well attuned to these issues, and I think they work hard to find people to come into our county that that use our land well, and at the same time provide the economic background that we need. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition of things that happened last month.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. If you can figure out that way to balance kind of the small town, small county charm with growth and economic development, you'd write a book, and I'd buy that book, because it's I think it's a challenge for a lot of places that are around our area that are growing so quickly. So thank you very much. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Wilma Blaney. I just want to say Aberdeen had I think the second smallest library in the state or something like that. And it's an old library. So about 10 years ago, they started a group formed, Friends of the Aberdeen Library, to build another library, and they've been trying to raise money and everything. So the town about 2 years ago gave them an old building, and it's being refurbished. It's completely being renovated, and it's coming along very nicely. But I wanted to say, I have to tell you, I was so happy, but we got we've been getting donations and doing fundraisers. We got $500,000 toward the library to the town received the money for our library. So I just wanted to share that with you because that is I am very happy about that.
Thank you, Ms. Laney. I'm very pro-library, so I'm glad to hear that. Anybody else?
I might mention a program that Durham County has going on, and it's in conjunction with Central Pines Regional Council, actually. And it's entitled EBURP, which stands for Energy Burden and Emissions Reduction Program. And it's a grant that Durham County received along also with Orange County and Granville County. And Carolina Pines Regional Council is a key partner as well. Probably they're administering the grant. I'm not quite sure. They helped us apply. You all did something wonderful to help us receive this grant, but this money will be made available for helping lower income communities reduce their energy burden, make upgrades to their homes that will be greener and more efficient. And in order to do good outreach in these communities, I'm pretty sure that there will be stipends given to sort of like energy navigators within these communities. It sounds like a really neat program. It's just getting off the ground, and just want to again thank the council for help.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Anyone else? I have one real quick. I mentioned in our last meeting about there was a full room about housing. A lot of the issue is related to our mobile home parks in Apex, of which there are 3 at least in the planning areas, a couple of them in the town limits proper. And as you guys probably, if you don't know much about them, a lot of these communities are vulnerable because they often don't own the land that's beneath the home. And it's, even though it's called a mobile home park, I think it's a misnomer because they oftentimes are very difficult to move, very expensive. So we've been grappling with what to do about that, and can the town help out with preventing displacement or helping with future redevelopment in a way that would protect those residents. And so I suspect I've heard about the news some in different communities, and I think it's definitely not just an Apex issue, but a broader issue. And I hope that to learn more about that, maybe through this organization, about the best practices related to that topic. Thanks. Anybody else want to chime in? Going once. Going twice. Okay. Well, thank you so much for those comments for everybody. And I don't think there is any other business. Lee, can you confirm? Are we good?
Yes, sir. We are good.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
This is Heidi. So moved.
Second, Hamilton.
Thank you very much. With that motion and a second, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.